Hello, everyone. This is your host, Debra Poneman, and I'd like to welcome you to our call with today's guest, Dr. Dain Heer. Dr. Dain opens up an energetic space of being that allows for awareness to play with magic. Together with the practical and dynamic tools of Access Consciousness, this space can give you a starting point for creating a limitless life. In fact, Dain has traveled the world teaching advanced classes in Access Consciousness and facilitating an exploration of creation that has never been possible before. When he's not traveling, he's busy co-hosting the radio show Conversations in Consciousness with Gary Douglas, the founder of Access. He's also appeared on Gaiam TV, the Good Morning Show in New Zealand, the Today Show in Toronto, the Circle and Morning Show in Australia, and many internationally syndicated talk radio shows. He's also the author of 9 books. And in searching for a way to create lasting results and change, Dain developed a unique energy transformation process called the energetic synthesis of being. Through this process, he gives you a fresh perspective that allows you to see, perhaps for the first time, what is right about you. It's a completely different approach to healing and change where people tap into and recognize their own abilities and self-knowing. And the possible energetic transformation is fast, dynamic, and it extends not only to healing, but to money, relationships, really every area of life. And today, with Dain's help, we're going to discover some practical tools that can easily change the things that are limiting you and open up a space where you can step into the greatness you truly be. You'll also be given a totally different way of exploring what you are really capable of, as Dain will be facilitating and empowering you to access what you know using the verbal clearing process from Access Consciousness. He's also going to teach you how to learn to create your life and reality on your own terms, and you will come out of a judgment of you for being as different as you are and begin to acknowledge that in truth, no limitation is real. It's all a creation. This will be the beginning of creating your life and your reality on your own terms. And finally, you're going to experience the energy, vibration, and resonance of consciousness where everything exists and nothing is judged, including you, through what Dain calls the energetic synthesis of communion. And I also have to say that Dain is going to share with us beyond the normal, average, and real the weird, wacky, and wonderful. So Dain, the wonderful Dain, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the call.
Debra, thanks for having me. You're just so wonderful. Now, I hope I can live up to that billing, I tell you.
Well, I know you're going to live up to that billing and beyond. So now, what I want you to do before I dive into the gazillion questions that I have for you, can you take a few minutes to share what you believe were the major turning points in your life that allowed you to manifest who you are today and the way that you contribute to the world in such a magnificent way?
Well, if we're talking about lifetime worth, it's like when I was a kid, I grew up in the ghetto, and literally I was the only white kid for 8 square miles. And in the ghetto, it's like I experienced sort of every form of abuse imaginable, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse. At one point I had people standing over me, beating my little naked body with belts. And that formed an impression, if you will, in my world that I thought had sort of plagued me over the course of my life. And strangely, now this is an interesting thing, and I've noticed this with other kids too. There are times where kids, even when they're being abused, still manage to find joy in their lives somewhere, somehow. And I was one of those kids. And yet I had all these problems and limitations too. And if you fast forward to the age of 30, back in 2000, it's like I got to the place where my whole life I was trying to look for things that I could do to change things, to make people's lives better, to make my life better. I was one of these people that had 5 self-help books open at all times. And, and I'd go to a weekend workshop and I'd be like, yay, finally, I found it. I'm back. I'm connected with that piece again. Except by Wednesday, I was buried again in the crap and the muck. And I was so tired of struggling that I went, look, universe, here's the deal. You got 6 months. Either my life really changes this time or I'm out of here. It was just, I knew my life could be different and I didn't seem to be able to create it. And I went, okay, universe. So you got 6 months. And literally a week later, I saw an ad for Access Consciousness. And it said, Access, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. Initially, I was angry, but I called and, because I was like, ease, joy, and glory? You have no idea what my life is like. My life is pain, suffering, and glory. My life sucks. I hate myself. I want to kill myself. And there it was, ease, joy, and glory. And so I called the girl that put the ad in the paper, and I said, what do you do? And she said, well, we do all kinds of stuff, but you might want to start with this thing called the bars. It's 32 points in the head. And I went, okay, I've done a lot of weird stuff. And plus, if it doesn't work, I can leave. And I said, what's the effect? She said, at the worst, you'll feel like you had a good massage. At the best, your whole life will change. And so I had her come over to my chiropractic office because we were trading sessions because I couldn't afford to pay for it at the time. She puts her hands on my head and this energy washes through me. And it was like, I started giggling like a little kid. I was like, hee, 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 hee. And every time she'd move her hands, I would giggle more and giggle more and giggle more. And I got up an hour and 15 minutes later. And it was the first sense of peace I'd had since I was 14 years old that was that all-encompassing. It was like everything was okay, everything always had been, and everything always would be. And I truly never contemplated killing myself again. But the difference was it created this space of possibility for me where I looked at the world as something of beauty, and it gave me a space to be. And that's one of the things I love about Access. It gives you a space to be. If you've ever been out in nature where it feels like you can just relax and allow yourself to unwind, that's what Access basically creates. And the interesting thing was, though, that after this session where I had this awareness, she said, okay, so here's the thing. This reality is kind of tough. I'm going to give you tools every time we get together, and you can practice those tools during the week and see what they do. And what it did was these tools that she gave me, literally every time the world went to cave back in on my head, I'd use one of these tools and it would uncave. And I was like, oh my gosh, I found the actual tools that work. And every week, the sense of space I had would increase and it would get more and more and more. And it was like life just became more beautiful. And using these tools, every time it went to turn around into some yucky, mucky thing, it would get even more beautiful and more beautiful. And at this point, it's like I have the fortune of sharing these very tools that I got, but also helping to create tools for people so that their change can be infinitely faster than mine was.
And I thank you for sharing that entire story with us. It's really quite amazing because there are a lot of people who have had a lot of early trauma and they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s and still letting it run their lives. And one of the things I personally love about Access is that people think that getting out of those memories, getting out of that space where we live in from the time that we're abused at 8, they think transformation has to be really difficult. But what I love about Access is what you say. It is effortless. It's joyful. It's fun. I mean, it doesn't have to be heavy, and it is fast. And the other thing I love about it is that it lasts beyond Tuesday.
Yes, exactly. And I'm so glad you're bringing that up because, all the stuff that you just mentioned, I've seen this so much where, like you said, people are in their 60s and 70s and they still don't know that life can be joyful. And, it's such a travesty to me because I remember it so well. That's not the way it's got to be. The tools are truly available to change even the stuff you thought was impossible to change. So here's the first tool I'd like to share with people is what's true always makes you feel lighter. A lie always makes you feel heavier. And so if I say that, or if Debra and I are talking and you get this inspiration, that's the lightness of what's actually true. So if you're sitting there and you're 50 or 60 or 40 or 10 or whatever age you are, and you're like, yes, something greater is possible, that's actually the lightness of what's true. And if you just recognize that and start looking at that in your life, because what most of us do is we take the heaviness and we try to somehow, which is a lie for us, and we try to somehow turn it into a lightness. Like when somebody tells us a lie, we somehow try to make it true for us. But if you can just acknowledge, hey, you know what? It's a lie. That's all. Okay, cool. And then you start to follow the things in your life that make you feel light when you think about them. And then your life starts to get lighter.
Can you explain that a little bit more about heavy and light? Because that is actually one of the tools that has been so valuable in my life, and that a lie is always heavy. But I know that I had to have that explained a little bit more thoroughly before I could use it in my life.
Yes, I definitely understand. You know, that is so funny. I just had a lady send me an email, and I was reading it yesterday, and I was just going, oh, this is so cool. I may have to paraphrase. It's like a paragraph. She says, I've been in Access for a while. These tools are amazing. Light and heavy has saved my life on more than one occasion. I was coming home from work one night. I was listening to an ESC. ESC is energetic synthesis of communion. And she said, I was so floaty and I was so much space. Then something was different than that. So I asked a question where I was walking and it was heavy. In other words, see, what happens is she had this lightness, which is actually what we all should be. You should be able to be that much more of your life than not lightness, okay? And so she was listening to this energetic synthesis of communion. She had this lightness, and then she got this weird sort of heaviness, this twist into heaviness. And so she asked a question, which is like, hey, what's going on here? What is my awareness telling me here? And so she asked a question about walking where she was walking. It was heavy. So she asked about catching a taxi, and it returned her to that sense of space and ease. She said, so I followed that. The taxi driver was so nice and joyful. It was a gift to be in the taxi. The next day, I heard that around the time I was walking home, there was a group of young men causing trouble for people, and some full-on things happened on that particular street, like people being beaten up and that sort of thing. She said, thank you so much for the tool and the tools you share. It's fantastic to have a reminder of the simple tools that can change everything. And I'm like, wow. And I literally have this email pegged and starred because it's such a reminder that sometimes the simplest of tools can contribute the most to us if we're willing to use them. And there are a lot of Access tools that are really, really, really simple to use. And sometimes people think, well, oh, it's too simple, so it must not work very well, because they think change has to be difficult, like you said. But so did that explain the light and heavy a little better?
Yes, actually it did, because I just learned something new. And Yay! Because what I just learned is that you can be walking along and you can have that feeling of heavy and you could ignore it. We all have it. Either light, joyful, heavy, contracted. And probably most of the time we ignore it because we got to get somewhere. But in not only physically walking, but in our lives, we have that heavy and we just plow through it anyway. And now I see that it's not just, I use it when I need to make a decision. I'll put, one choice in one hand and one in the other, and I feel, like what's heavy and what's light. And that's how I make decisions. And I learned that from Access. But now I got that you can use it in any moment of every day, just as you're moving through life.
Yeah, cool. If you take that away from this call and start instituting it and start realizing that that is your awareness, that's your knowing of what's going to happen in the world around you. And see, we all have this level of awareness, but it's so simple. We wouldn't think that it could be so simple as light and heavy, but it is. And that's our awareness telling us, hey, you know what? This is heavy. It's like if you've ever been asked out on a date and it got really heavy and twisted and weird. And so you had the awareness as soon as you were asked out of the energy that was going to get created if you said yes. But most of us think, oh, wow, they're so cute, so I'm going to say yes. And then you go out on a date and it's exactly as heavy as it was when you got asked out. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so these are the simple tools, and that's the thing that I love about Access. It's not about it has to occur in a classroom or in a cave somewhere. It's like, this is the situations of our lives that we're talking about.
I remember one time I was at a training that you did, and this just stuck with me. You said that people hold themselves down and they don't let their joy show for being afraid of being judged. And then you said, hey, people are going to judge you anyway, so you might as well enjoy your life.
Exactly.
And that has really stuck with me. And sometimes when I'm afraid, because I'm kind of wild and wacky too, and sometimes I'll stop and kind of like, you know, put a lid on it, and I think, oh, they're going to judge me anyway. I might as well enjoy my life. But a lot of Access is about getting out of judgment of others and ourselves. I'd love to go down that path right now. Would you go there with me and
Absolutely.
talk about judgment?
Absolutely. Well, the thing is, we've been taught that judgment is somehow creative, like as though it's somehow a source of creation, but it's not. It's always a source of destruction. It always creates less than what was before judgment. And it's funny because there's so many people who have been taught that judgment is the way to find out what's right and what's wrong. Well, it is, but once you judge something as right or wrong, nothing that doesn't match your judgment can come into your awareness. So for every judgment you make, you cut off every other awareness of what could be possible and what something could contribute to you. But this is what we're taught growing up, is that we need to judge. Because when you're a little kid and you don't judge, they're like, come on, make a decision. Come on, tell me what your point of view is. And you're like, but I don't have a point of view. I just want to be happy, you know? Mm-hmm. But that's not acceptable. So what happens with this judgment thing is we've learned to let it run us and run our lives. So when somebody has judgment, we go, oh, can I make myself small enough so that I won't be the effect of their judgment? Rather than, wait a minute. Somebody judging you, are they trying to empower you and make your life greater, or are they trying to limit you? Well, of course it's limit you. And so what they're doing is they're actually trying to limit you. And you say, oh, because you're judging me and it's so intense, I'm going to do what you want me to do, and I'm going to make myself smaller. That's a huge unkindness to us. And so it's like you said, my suggestion is, look, rather than trying to make yourself small so people won't judge you, ask this question: has it ever actually worked? When you've made yourself smaller, now you feel less space, you feel bad about you, you're judging the wrongness of you because that's what they're doing. And now, but has it made them stop judging? Or are they still judging? Now they just judge you for something else. And so rather than look at that and go, oh, they're judging me, so I'll stop, turn it up. You know, turn it up in the face of judgment. Don't turn it down, because like you said, they're going to judge you anyway. And that's, if you can just embrace that one piece of information and actually start what it does is it starts pointing your awareness to where people actually are judging. And then you start going, okay, well, am I going to choose to let this run my life or not? And if not, you have a totally different choice available. And that's where the creation of your life and living comes in.
I have to say that when I was at an evening event with you, I was sitting next to somebody who was so annoyed by you. You were saying the clearing statement, which I know you're going to share with us, and he wasn't getting it. He said, if he says that one more time, I am leaving. And he was like, really? And I'm sitting next to this guy, and it was like escalating. And every time he said the clearing statement, I could just feel him like clench, you know. And the crazy thing was, by the end, I don't know what happened, but by the end, he's like, okay, I'm going to sign up for whatever he has. I mean, something, he came out on the other end, and I don't know how or why. Maybe it was the power of the clearing statement. Could you comment on that?
Well, yeah, it's actually, let me comment on that by giving you an example. I was facilitating a class at one of the Access 7-day events, which is an advanced event. You have to go through, 4 or 5 classes before you can even get there. And so this lady had had quite a bit of access over the previous year. And she raised her hand, and because I was talking about this judgment thing, and she raised her hand and she says, I want you to know I used to hate you. And I was like, okay, thanks. And, I started to continue talking, and she said, no, I'm not done. I said, okay, tell me what you mean. She said, well, I used to see you in these videos, and I'd see you, you know, in class or whatever, and you were just like jumping around on stage, and you were so bubbly, and you seemed so happy, and you seemed to not care whether people judged you or not. And I just was so angry with you. I hated you. And I went, okay, thank you. And I went to move on. She said, oh, no, I'm not done. She said, look, what I realized from this was because I started using the tool that you gave me about what's right about this I'm not getting. And if judgment weren't real, what other choice would I have available? Okay. And what's right about this I'm not getting. And if judgment weren't real, what choice would I have available here? She said, and I use these access tools and some of the other processes. And what I finally realized was when I was a little girl, I was like that. I was so bubbly and I was so joyful and I was so happy and nothing fazed me and people came down on me so hard and I made their judgments so real that I'd been stopping myself. I'd become my own judgment police against myself. And when I saw you being that way, I hated it because it reminded me of the person I was, and I wasn't choosing to be it, and I had become my own police against myself. And it activated me so much. But thanks to my friend Pock and Pod, which is this clearing statement, which we'll talk about in a little bit, she said, and asking the questions, she's like, I got to tell you, I'm so grateful for you. She said, I just want to let you know I love you and I'm so grateful. And she said, thank you for being willing to endure so many people's judgments so we can get free. And I was like, oh man, thank you, you know, because I don't care if somebody judges me. I want them to have the freedom of them that's possible. And if we realize that we've been taught to judge that which is beyond our experience of what's right and wrong, but we've also been taught to judge everything that we were judged for. And this is where the clearing statement comes in that I haven't yet explained, but I will in just a minute. But the thing I love about Access, we'll have this kind of a conversation. In any other modality, you'd have that conversation, go, yes, well, okay, I'm going to try not to do that in the future. And yet you'd find yourself doing it 3 days from now and going, darn, I was going to try to change that. Well, with this, what we do is we say, okay, so everywhere where you become your own judgment police against you, and everywhere where you're holding in place the judgments that were directed at you, and now you direct them at other people, will you let that go? Will you destroy and uncreate it, please? And if the answer is yes, then we run the clearing statement, which is basically the short form for the clearing statement is POC and POD all that, which stands for going to the point of creation of wherever it started or the point of destruction. The long form is right and wrong, good and bad, which stands for your judgments, which we just talked about, of the thing, both good and bad. And by the way, our good judgments tend to limit us even more than our bad judgments, because when we decide something is bad, we're willing to change it. When we decide it's good, we're not willing to change it, which stops us from having something even greater. So it's right and wrong, good and bad, POD and POC, all 9, which stands for 9 layers of this thing, so we get the biggest pile of yuck out of the way for every scoop we take. Shorts, boys, and beyonds. And the shorts, boys, and beyonds stand for what you made meaningful about it, what you made meaningless, the punishments for it, the rewards for it. The boys are these things where if you've ever been told you have to peel the layers of the onion to get to the root of the issue, it's not actually an onion. It's this thing that holds limitation in place called a nucleated sphere that makes it so the limitation keeps coming back over and over and over. We cleared that. And then also beyonds, which is where if you've ever, you have your $39.95 cell phone bill, and all of a sudden you've been talking so much and doing so much texting and everything else that you get it back and it's $842, and you look at it, that's a beyond. So we clear all of these things with the clearing statement so that you actually have a totally new lease on life, a totally fresh place from which to start. And it starts to change the energy around you. And the thing is, I talk about energy a lot, but for me, it's really practical and pragmatic. Because if you can get the difference in energy, Debra, between waking up one morning and feeling totally alive, totally ready to go, like, man, I can create anything. And then the difference between that energy and the energy that you're in when you wake up and it feels like the elephant is sitting on your head, those are 2 totally different energies. Well, much more of your life should be like the first one. And when I say should, I mean should from the place of it can be. it ought to be by your natural state of being. So let's change the energy of the things that don't allow that to become your reality and create a totally different reality for you, one that you actually love.
So the clearing statement, can you explain to us as we're going through our lives how we can use a clearing statement? And for now, we can just do POC and POD and all that. How we can use the clearing statement just to take baby steps towards creating the life that we love. And again, you've given us so much already in this call, so many tools that are going to shift our lives, but I'd like to know how to use this one.
Well, so it's like this. You can ask a question to bring up the energy of anything that's limiting you and change it. Or ask a question of something you'd like to create and undo what stands in the way of you creating it. And the thing to realize is a lot of us have thought that somewhere cognitively we know what's limiting us. Well, sorta, but we only know about 1% of what's limiting us cognitively. What happens with this clearing statement is it undoes all of the non-cognitive things that are limiting you, which is where the real limitation lies. Because if all of your limitations were cognitive, in other words, if you could point them out, if you could point them all out, you'd be able to change them already. But many of them are energetic. Like, for example, when you think about desiring more money, but feeling like you can't create it, that's an energy. That's not even a cognitive thing, because you go into this particular energy and you're like, ugh. So actually, just a real simple thing you can do is you can go, okay, so everything that makes me feel like I can't do this, destroy and uncreate it. And when I say destroy it, what we're doing is we're destroying the structure of limitation. And we're uncreating, which means we're taking our creative energy out of creating limitation for us, and we're actually putting it back into creation for us. So it's destroy and uncreate, so you get both aspects of what's been creating the limitation. So let's say you're having a bad day. You can go, okay, so everything that creates me believing that this is a good idea, right and wrong, good and bad, POD and POC, all 9 shorts, boys and beyonds, or POC and POD, all that. Either way works. Or you could even say all that weird stuff Dain said the other day, and it'll still work. And it really is that simple. And there are more complex processes, if you will, because each word has an energy to it. So we can say things in a specific way and then POD and POC them, and they address specific energies of limitation. So let's take a subject. Anything you want to work on?
Oh boy. Well, I know something that we spoke about earlier. I believe that other people experience this too, and that is when somebody compliments you or somebody tells you that you did a good job or that you're beautiful or something, you absolutely cannot handle taking it in.
Right. So here's what you want to do with that. You go, okay, and the cool thing is this is sort of a real simple one. You go, okay, so when you realize it, because what happens is, you know, you'll have somebody say something about how amazing you are, how beautiful, how sexy, how brilliant or something, and you're like, oh, okay, I didn't receive that at all. So when you realize it, you go, wow, everything that doesn't allow me to receive that, I now destroy and uncreate it. So you're destroying and uncreating the wall that you put up around you. Destroy and uncreate it, right and wrong, good and bad, POD and POC, all 9 shorts, boys and beyonds. And literally that can be enough. And then you could go, okay, just imagine that person saying that to you again and see if it feels any different. One of the things that you notice from this is you start to feel different, like something feels lighter. So what happens is it's like when there was this heaviness, when there was this stuff that you couldn't receive, it sort of got sort of like this heavy sort of, you're not totally present, like you kind of check out in order not to receive it, rather than being totally present. And because somebody actually acknowledging you for something like that should be a gift. It should lighten up your world. But for a lot of us, it doesn't, because we've also been taught that we can't receive. Receiving is not something we do very well on this planet. And one of the things that, and that's, by the way, that's the primary creation of money problems for people, is not receiving. 2 things, not receiving and not creating their future, are 2 of the main reasons people have money problems. So the not receiving part, as you start to change that, what happens is it's like the walls that were in the way of you actually having a sense of lightness and being able to have the money you're looking for and the relationship you're looking for, it starts to change. But the way you know it's changing is it starts to feel different first. It's like, wow, this is lighter. This is easier for me.
I totally get that now. And I just have to make two comments. One is this thing that you said, the primary reason that people have money problems is also the same thing that we're taught, and we've internalized this thing of not receiving. And I have a friend who has done, a lot of the access work, and she was the one that we always, if she had to go on a weekend with us, or if there was some event coming up, we'd always have to pay for her because she was the one who never had any money. And now she's doing that for us, because she did access. And it's like, whoa, baby. And now that I realize she also has a relationship too. And so I guess what happened is through her work with access is that she got rid of that, not, because she received in kind of a warped kind of a way, but not in that big way that she does now, receiving from the universe. She would receive like a few dollars so she can, have a meal with us, but not in this huge way that she's receiving now because she destroyed and uncreated what was holding her back in that big way.
So friggin' cool. I love hearing things like that. Do you realize, that's why I do what I do. And because to be in the place I was 13 years ago where I was literally going to end it all and to come across the tools to change it, that is wonderful and phenomenal. But to be able to share those tools with other people and see it work for them too, hearing a story like that is just so friggin' cool. And the interesting thing about it is, that is an evidence for you and for all of your friends. I know you didn't need evidence. This thing of changing things is who you are, but for your friends, it's like, just imagine how much that one change, that thing of, oh, you know what, let me buy you lunch now. I've got the money. Oh, by the way, and I've got the really cute guy too. How does my life get any better than that? That one change in her world, imagine how much it's rocking the world of all your friends. Even the friends that weren't necessarily interested in changing anything, once they realize, wow, even this long-standing pattern that this person had of feeling like she needed to take in order to be contributed to by the universe because she wasn't willing to receive, if that changes the basis of reality for everyone around her because they can no longer deny that fundamental level of change is possible. And that's what I love about Access is like it's fundamental change. It's like you be more of you. I'd say you are different, but it's who you actually already are that you've just sort of lost touch with, basically.
And I'll say one other thing about this friend is that she looks like she got a facelift. I don't know she didn't, but her face, she just like glows. There's this luminosity. She's always beautiful, but even her physicality has completely changed.
Yeah. Well, when you're not stressed out about the world anymore, when it's like when you start to realize that you can embrace possibilities and enjoy them and invite them, it changes your whole countenance. It changes the way you show up to the world. It changes the way your body looks. I used to have to work out personally. I used to have to work out 6 days a week for an hour and a half to maintain any sort of muscle, but also to maintain not being in judgment of me and my body for being a pudgy pile of poo. And quite frankly, my body and I were probably never a pudgy pile of poo, but that was always my judgment, because like everybody else, I learned to live in a pile of judgment. And what happened was I started doing Access, and then at one point I started traveling so much, it was like I was working out 20 minutes a week. But at the same time, I was using this Pock and Pod and using the other tools. And so literally 20 minutes a week, my body looked better than it did when I was working out 9 hours a week, because it's your point of view that creates your reality. And imagine not being burdened by this just intense monstrosity of judgment and wrongness that you try to overcome and feeling like you're not enough all the time. Imagine how much less stress that is on your body when you don't have to do that.
Well, all I could say is sign me up for everything else Access, because if I could save my 7 hours a week that I work out, yeah, baby, and still look good. Are you serious? Really?
And that's the interesting thing is when I talk about this thing about energy, It's literally changing the energy of how things function for you, because your point of view creates your reality. Reality does not create your point of view. So, your point of view about something determines how it's going to show up for you. And as one of the things that this does is it literally allows you to change your own points of view, which is one of the greatest gifts you can get. I mean, there was a guy, just as an example, there was a guy who was being interviewed after Hurricane Andrew. And he was standing there in front of a slab, and he was being interviewed by this person. And this person says, "So what's your story?" This news person. And he goes, "Well, I was living up north, and I moved down here to Florida to sunk all my money into that house because it was going to be my retirement oasis. And now it's gone." And she says, "Really, how do you feel about that?" He says, "I'm doing okay. I still got me." And I was like, wow. Imagine that point of view versus the other people that were on that that were also being interviewed. And they were like, "I can't believe God would let this happen to me. Somebody must hate me. This world sucks." I mean, who's going to have an easier time changing everything that occurs? The guy with the easy point of view, but you can change your points of view. That's part of what Access allows you to do. And you can do it in other ways. I just know for me that the other ways that I had available took so long to change one point of view that it became so drudgerous. I don't even know if drudgerous is a word, but I think I just made one up.
Yeah,
we're making new words.
I like it. It's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. But, it used to be such drudgery to change those points of view, but it doesn't have to be. It can be easy peasy.
How about this thing that I know I've also heard you talk about, that our thoughts and our feelings and you talked about judgments, that they've been passed down. And even when we're a child, we're told, don't think that way. And I love what you said, that nothing that doesn't match your judgment can come into your experience. And that is so intense, whether the judgment is good or quote unquote bad. But I've also heard you say that our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions and our judgments don't even belong to us. I mean, who do they belong to if they don't belong to us?
Yeah, exactly. I love that question. Who do they belong to? And that's actually the question you want to ask. What you want to do is, in the presence of any heaviness, any judgment, anything that runs around in your head continuously, just go, who does that belong to? If it lightens up at all, it's not yours. 98% of your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your judgments, your sense of heaviness, your sense that you can't do it, isn't yours. And where does it come from? You're like a big psychic radio receiver. You're picking it up from the people in the world around you, but you've never really acknowledged that could ever be the case because nobody's ever told us. And so literally, if you'll ask, who does this belong to every thought, feeling, and emotion, judgment, and heaviness you have for 3 days, at the end of 3 days, you'll walk around like you're in a walking, talking meditation. And imagine if 98% of the crap that was in your head today didn't have to be there tomorrow. What would that be like? People will go, "Oh, yeah, right, if it were that easy." And I'm like, actually it is. Actually, I'm living proof, because I used to be so friggin' depressed I wanted to kill myself. And I'll tell you this, I hope I can make this a quick story, but when I went and I had my first Access bar session, literally I got the space of living again. And I was like, oh my God, it can exist. And what used to happen for me was I would wake up and I would cry. My girlfriend would leave for work and I would start crying because I felt like I couldn't make my life happen. And I thought, I tried all this stuff and it wasn't going in the direction I wanted to. And I would just cry out of total frustration and unhappiness. Well, 3 days after I got my bars run, I was going into one of these states of crying in the morning again. And I was like, oh man, it's back, man. And the girl, when she had run my bars, she said, look, 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions don't belong to you. And I got to say, I thought she was full of crap, okay? And she wrote down, who does this belong to, in her little scrawled handwriting on a sticky note, a yellow sticky note. I'll never forget it. Well, when I came home from that bar session, I unloaded my pockets and I put all the stuff on my nightstand by my clock. So that sticky note happened to still be there 3 days later when I'm going into this trauma and drama. And I look over at my clock, as I've done so many mornings over the last 3 years, to see how much longer I can wallow in self-pity before I have to go be a doctor and try to help other people. And I look at this little yellow sticky note and I read the words, who does this belong to? And instantly it goes away. Literally instantaneously. The tears, the sadness, the sense of frustration, the sense that I can't do it, gone. And I was like, are you serious? On the one hand, I was overjoyed. On the other hand, I was really pissed off because I was like, somebody really should have told me this a long time ago. So I think I had to get it that way so I would be able to speak to other people about it from this not being able to doubt that it actually works. But I've literally worked with people who had knee surgery on one knee, had the same injury on the other knee, and using primarily Who Does This Belong To, got them out of the pain within about 20 to 30 minutes. And I was like, wow. So it works emotionally. It also works physically. You want to ask, who does this belong to? So the thoughts, feelings, emotions, judgments, heaviness, if it lightens up at all, it's not yours. Just return it to sender. And you don't have to live with other people's crap filling your head anymore.
Wow. Can you just say return to sender?
Yep. You just go, who does that belong to? If it lightens up, like, for example, you'll be having a great day and then all of a sudden you'll be walking and you feel like, oh my God, I'm so afraid. It's like, wait a minute. You were just having a great day. Nothing happened. Nothing changed, except now you feel afraid or afraid of money or sad about it or something. And then you look for why. No, don't look for why. Just go, who does this belong to? And if that feeling of being afraid lightens up at all, it's not yours. It's just an energy that you're perceiving in the world. And you even have to know where it comes from. You just go, okay, return to sender. And the weird part is, because there are lots of people who said, yeah, but I think it's probably my mom's, and I don't want to return it to my mom. I'm like, look, what if it wasn't your mom's originally either? What if it's actually somebody else's? And what if it wasn't that person's originally either? When you return it to sender, it goes back through all those people to who originally created it. I don't know. We could maybe do this one thing and free our entire planet. Who knows?
Wow. I am very curious about this energetic synthesis of communion, because this is something that I haven't heard of yet. Maybe I did and it just went into my mind and out the other side, which is also possible. But is this something that you can give us an experience of today?
It would be my pleasure, actually. And I call it energetic synthesis of communion because communion is where you have a connection to every molecule in existence. And, you know, we talked about earlier where we stand there and we have our barriers up so we don't actually receive what's possible. So we don't receive the money, we don't receive the relationships, we don't receive the things that we would actually like to receive. And what ends up happening is what this does is it truly can give you a sense of being connected and in total oneness with the universe around you. So let's do this. So let's have everybody just go ahead and close their eyes if they would. Thank you. Now, if you happen to be driving, don't close your eyes. Just so you know. Okay, so take a deep breath in from the top of your head down to the tips of those cute, sweet, adorable little toes of yours. Thanking your sweet, beautiful body for being the gift that it is. And realize that you haven't necessarily been taught how to receive. You've been taught to reject. You've been taught to judge. You've been taught to shut things out and shove them away. But what if it's time to actually receive? What if it's time to actually be in connection with this beautiful planet of ours and with all the beauty that it has, even though so many people go throughout their lives with such stress and such trauma and drama and unhappiness and unkindness towards themselves and other people? What if it's time for you to have a different world, a different reality? What if it's time now for you to actually have a communion and a connection, not just with the earth, but with every living, breathing element of consciousness that permeates it? Everything that's been done to separate you and your body from having a direct, beauteous connection with the earth, will you destroy it and create it, please? Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. And what if you knew that there wasn't anything wrong with you any longer? What if it's actually time to step beyond the limitations of continuously thinking you're wrong to the possibilities of knowing that you are different, that you are something greater than this world has ever been able to show you, that you are something that is a greatness of possibility, that when you allow the mundane situations of your life to change, like money, relationships, career, level of happiness, that you are actually the inspiration to change impossibilities for our world. That becomes the inspiration for people to change, to become greater, because you show them it's possible. Everything you've done to not acknowledge the greatness that you be, the energy that you be, the invitation to possibilities you be, and the space of the consciousness you have the capacity to be if you would demand it of you with ease. Will you destroy and uncreate it, please? Right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all nine, shorts, boys, and beyonds. And right now I'd invite you to lower the walls that you usually keep around you to define you as you, to keep you limited, to keep you stuck, to keep you unhappy, to keep you unaware, that also keep out the greatness of what life and living could be. And it's just a choice. All you have to do is ask. But would you be willing to know that it's time for something different? Time for something different for you and for us and for our world, for our planet, for the beautiful people we care about living on it. To acknowledge it's time for the greatness of you to show up, for you to demand of you, I'm no longer going to try to fit into the tiny limited box that other people try to put me in. I'm no longer going to fit into the tiny limited box that I thought I could not overcome. Today is my day, and now is my time. And I'm opening the box. I'm unlocking it. I'm putting the keys in the locks, and it's time to destroy the locks and the keys and set us free. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And now is the time, my beautiful friends, for the consciousness you are. That which will allow you to change everything. Because your consciousness is your awareness without judgment, your awareness of possibilities, your awareness of greatness, your awareness of joy, your awareness of connection, your awareness of not being separate and not being alone and not being apart. That is the greatness of you and the greatness of what is possible. It is now time for your consciousness, the consciousness you truly be, to awaken in totality. And everything that doesn't allow it, let us undo, destroy, and uncreate it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So whenever you're ready, actually take a deep breath in from the top of your head down to the tips of those cute, sweet, adorable little toes of yours. Thanking your sweet body for being such a gift. And just put your hands on your body somewhere. Maybe put your hands on your face if you can. And just acknowledge your body. And thank your body for being the gift that it is. Just feel your hands on your face on your hands, and just say thank you. And also, you might apologize for not listening. Your body's been trying to communicate with you for a very long time. What if it's time to start listening? What if it has an awareness and a consciousness and an awareness of what could be contributed to you that would change your future, change your now, and change your sense of peace in living and being alive? And what if you are one of the few people on the planet that even values a sense of peace in being alive? What if you're one of the few people on the planet that doesn't just think that life is about being monotonous and doing what everybody else thinks they're supposed to, and that is actually successful living? What if it's not for you, and what if that's okay? And what if even more than being okay, what if that's part of the greatness of you, that you know something different, that you see something different, that you perceive something different? And what if it's time for you to awaken that weird, wild, wonderful difference you truly be, rather than trying to buy the lie and make yourself believe that you're only here to fit into this reality. On 3. 1, 2, 3. And everything that doesn't allow that, times a gazillion. Right, wrong, good, bad, all 9, pod, poc, shorts, boys and beyonds. Okay, beautiful people, whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes.
Well, that was extraordinary.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, in the few minutes that we have left, you know what? I have a good idea. While everybody is probably needing some time to slowly come out of that amazing reality, can you maybe just share with us some incredible turnaround or result or something that someone that you know experienced from making use of the tools that you offer?
Oh my, there have been so many amazing people who have. There was a gentleman that was in a one-day class that I did, and he came and he said, you know what, I was so terrified. I always had this sense of angst in my universe from as long as I can remember. And with something that we did during that day, that angst has gone out of my world. He's like, and I don't even know what we did, and I don't even know how it happened. But somehow, when I looked at it, I realized what happened was his angst had been because he had been taught to focus on the now and the past, rather than realizing that every choice you make today creates a future. And if you actually look far enough into the future for the choices you make, your life gets infinitely easier. So it was almost like he expanded his space of what he would allow himself to be aware of that took him out of the angst. And can you imagine living with that angst your whole life and having it go away? I was like, wow, that's awesome, because imagine what else he can create now. And there was another gentleman that class on bodies with me, and he said, you know what, I felt so much lightness and joy in my body. It was a very quiet and expansive experience. Then in the following days, it seemed to disappear. The first thought I had was, well, that was nice, and now I'll just go on with my life as before. And I started to recognize this was how I usually react to experiences of joy, etc. So I went on clearing it using the tools you gave me. And I started to ask the question, what if this experience is my natural state? The days after that, I started having this experience of lightness again, and it started to become my reality. And now it doesn't go away. And when it does, I have the tool to choose it again. That's that thing that we've been talking about, that is, I think one of the biggest frustrations for me personally was when I'd have a sense of lightness because I'd be introduced to some greater truth, something that was true or possible for me or something. And then 3 days later, it would feel like it was gone because I didn't have the tools to create it and maintain it. And then there was a lady who sent me an email, and I just, it was amazing. She said, I just want to thank you. I said, my life has changed drastically after Access. And what she talked about was, she said she works with all kinds of Bollywood people. She's actually in India, and she works on all these Bollywood people. And she said she's literally using Access processes to create the change in their bodies that would have taken surgery before. And she said, for experimenting on myself, I increased my lips and I made them poutier. I reduced the broadness of my nose, and my hair has grown around 3 inches. And she says, and I'm running these processes for hardly a minute. For my clients, I'm working on inch loss. One wanted more expressive eyes, so we're working on that too. And I was like, wow. So this stuff actually can work to change your body too. And the lady has pictures to prove it. And I'm going, okay, this is really cool. The limits, the bounds. The reason why, I called this going to the weird, wild, and wonderful is because that's where the fun is, that's where the joy of life is like in the weird, wild, and wonderful place of, wow, what if, what if this is actually possible? Well, I've seen it. I mean, I see it. Quite frankly, I see it every day. I am one of the luckiest people on the planet because I get to literally work with people every day and be in the presence of what other people would call miracles every single day, the change that I see. The reason I do what I do is because of that. I want people to know it's possible, and I'd really like them to get that they can have it too. It's just, you got to choose it. You got to choose to actually use the tools that are presented to you, and it's just an amazing thing of what's possible.
Well, I would have thought what the Bollywood lady had done, I would have thought, oh, really? But I am telling you, my friend, her whole facial structure has changed. It's phenomenal. When I'm with her, I stare at her. I'm like, are you sure you didn't get plastic surgery? Nope. So I've seen it with my own eyes. So I can verify that it's like structural. It's not just, a glow. It's really a change. It is. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And we want these tools so that we can have this and have it not go away in 3 days. I know that you've created a special offer for our community, and I would invite everyone to just click on the special offer button on this webpage. Dain, could you tell us what they're going to find there?
Oh, my dear, it would be my pleasure. Okay, so the first thing is I did a telecall series called The 69 Shades of Hedonism. And, of course, it's interesting, 50 Shades of Grey was so popular. I'm like, well, 50 is cool, but I think 69 would be a much more provocative number. And so
only you would call something the 69 Shades of Hedonism.
Exactly. And the thing about hedonism is it's so weird because hedonism gets a really bad rap. People go, oh, well, you're going to be selfish. But what it really means is actually living as the pursuit and the receiving of pleasure. Well, but here's the funny part is I was doing an interview the other day, and was being interviewed by this lady, and I was talking about 69 Shades of Hedonism, and she said, wow, that's interesting. She said, a few weeks ago, I made this demand. She said that I was going to live my life from the joy of it, no matter what anybody else had as a point of view, no matter what else was going on. My main criterion is, will it bring me more joy? And if it doesn't, I'm not going to choose it. And I said, and I went, yeah. And she had this lightness and this liveliness to her. And I said, let me ask you a question. How's your life gotten, worse or better? And she went, oh, it's gotten so much better. And that's exactly what it is your life actually starts getting better when you figure joy and pleasure into the equation of what you're choosing. See, because once again, your point of view creates your reality. You can be like that guy standing on the slab going, well, I'm okay, I still got me. Or you can go, oh, my God, I can't believe there's a hurricane, and this is the worst thing in the world, and my life sucks. And because that's the reality that's going to get created. So what this is, it's a telecall. It's the first 2 in a 6 telecall series. Each is an hour and a half long. And what happens is during the 2 calls, I went through and pointed out specifically where and how your life can actually change if you'd figure joy into the equation, which as we have this conversation, it obviously brings up all the stuff for people that doesn't allow that. It brings up all the places where that is not possible for you. And then we use these clearing statements to actually change it, to change the energetics of it that keep you from actually having joy and pleasure in your life. And I got to tell you, the one thing that I wanted almost more than anything else when I came to Access in 2000 was actually to get out of the depression and into the joy of living. And I actually found it. So that's what this is my gifting of this to you, because I've found specific ways that we can basically shortcut the time that it would take you to get there. And so these 2 calls are an hour and a half each. And then also what goes along with those is this loop of processes. You can actually listen to it while you sleep, which is really cool. Because I don't know about you, Debra, have you ever tried to do subliminal stuff, where you listen to those subliminal tapes while you sleep and it's supposed to change your money situation, change your body, change your weight and all that?
I actually, honest truth, I never did because I would never thought that they would work.
Well, I did, and they never worked. So
see, I save myself some time.
Save yourself time, money, and sleepless nights trying to figure out what was actually being said underneath the waves. But this stuff actually starts changing the energy of the situations in your life. There are many nights where I will actually listen to these very same processes while I sleep. And what's interesting is you have very interesting dreams, but then you wake up and there's more of a sense of connection to you and what you know. Feels like everybody else's mind chatter starts to go away. They have a vibration to them. And one of the things that is so essential, whether you've recognized it at this point in your life or not, is actually having reminders of the vibration of you, the vibration of what it is that you are beyond judgment. These process loops and these classes that are available as part of this package actually do that. And so for me, what will happen is I'll play these when I'm around people that I usually get heavy around, and I don't get heavy. It's almost like a little shot in the arm of, hey, that's okay. No, they're not your vibration. This is your vibration. And so it has that effect too. And I haven't often told people that in the past, so I wanted to make sure to let you know that. So you can actually listen to them while you sleep. You can listen to them anytime, and it creates dynamic change. And the third thing on the package is an ESB beginning class. This is energetic synthesis of being. And what it is an invitation to being an energy that allows you to connect your body with all of you. And so you're running on all cylinders. And basically, it's this invitation to this energy of what will actually be possible. Now, this is an online video, so you can watch me work on somebody on the table, and you'll see their body respond. But if you close your eyes, you'll notice that energy is there for you too. And it even comes through on the video. And this particular class it was a doozy. We talked about some amazing possibilities in it. And that's a 3-hour class, and it's available on online video on the Access Consciousness TV site. The next thing in the package, this is the Being You Creating Your Future class that I talked about, where the guy said, look, I've actually got a sense of peace. The angst has gone out of my world. But I did a one-day class in Stockholm, Sweden. I had started doing these one-day classes on different particular subjects. And this one was about creating your future. And I got to tell you, this was a dynamic class. The entire day, after about the first hour, there's so much space in the room and so much space in people's heads that sort of like judging becomes irrelevant. And what I realized from this gentleman sending me his feedback was that one of the sources of angst for us is we are not getting big enough. In other words, we're not actually actively creating our future. Most of us are trying to put out the fires in the present that were created by our unconscious choices in the past. This is about turning reality 180 degrees. What if the beginning were about creating your future, which would change what you chose in the present, which would make the past limitation non-relevant? So it's an all-day long class, and this is one of the most dynamic classes I have facilitated up till this point. It has been a doozy, and it created in people, what the feedback that I've gotten is people go, it's weird, I'm asking for things and they're showing up. I got a lot out of it cognitively is what they tell me, but I think I got more non-cognitively. It's almost like you introduce me to the energy of what it could be like to be me and create a totally different future than I thought was possible before. There's the next thing in the package is an ESC, the energetic synthesis of communion, which is similar to what we just did together. This will be a recording that you get, but it'll be a full hour of what we just did in that 5 or 7 minutes. This will be an entire hour. And you just lie down and receive. Just let this energy wash over you. Let it open up the spaces where you thought you had to defend and contract yourself, and let that open up into space. And let it open up into the space of being able to actually have a sense of ease being you and a sense of space and connection with everything else. And then there's also a taster. Next thing is a taster from, there's a class I did with the founder of Access, Gary Douglas, and it was called Happiness is Just a Choice. And it was a kick-butt class. It was so much fun, and there was so much laughter in it. And so I wanted to add this as a special bonus for the people getting the package, because it's like literally you sit there, you listen to the class, and it's like you can't help but smile. You can't help but get happier after listening to it. And couldn't we all use more happiness? And one of the things that we found out was one of the reasons people won't choose happiness is because it would make them bulletproof, basically. They'd no longer be limited in the ways that they have been by other people's judgments. Because if you're happy, you don't care if somebody else judges you. And it's one of the things that's been sort of almost eradicated from our world. You know, there's so many people who are unhappy. This is about getting you back to that state of happiness. And then a couple other free resources that are available here, which are, there's a quick start guide because there's all kinds of tools and access. Here's a quick start guide to start using them so you can hit the ground running with the most ease, which is just a 2-page PDF, real simple, but it's got a lot of tools on it that you can use right now. And the audio, it's 55 minutes. The feedback I get is people have said, when I'm out of sorts and I feel totally disconnected from me and I don't know what to do, every single time I've put on your audio, 55 minutes later, I feel like I'm connected with me again. I don't know what you do in this thing, but let me tell you, it's changing my world. So that's available as another free resource. And then also me explaining the access clearing statement. So if you're one of those people who wants to dot your I's and cross your T's appropriately, like I am, you know, if you're really anal and you want to do everything perfectly all the time, like me, then listen to this explanation of the clearing statement and you'll see what every aspect of it means. And then hopefully you'll feel really comfortable using it in your own life. So I put together this package because I truly wanted you to have something that would change your whole friggin' reality from the moment you start listening to it and the moment you start using it. So that is my hope for what it creates for you.
Well, I want to say two things besides that. This is just an unbelievable package. And I know it's $97, which is, I mean, just the one-day class that we're getting the whole thing is, I know it's $400 to attend that class. Just that one. And everything else that you're putting in and the happiness class, I didn't notice that was in there. The one thing I want to say is how much you are an example of what you teach, because just now when you were talking about how anal you are, and we knew that you were when you would use the wrong word and you would want to correct yourself, but at the same time you're just laughing because there's so much joy underneath it. It's not like usually when people make a quote unquote mistake that it's really contraction in the end of the world. You are just an amazing example of what you teach.
Thank you so much. That for me is one of the greatest acknowledgments I can receive. Thank you. You know, because I used to do seminars and workshops, and I would sit there listening to the people, and then there's so many times in meeting them afterwards that they would be something totally different than what they were talking about. And it was like, it hurt, you know, to have somebody talking about something that's so great and then meeting them later and finding something different was like, how can this be? So thank you. That is a great acknowledgement. I'm grateful.
Well, and it is just the case. And I actually look forward to the next time that we're together. If you haven't done it yet, just click on the special offer button on this page to see for yourself what an amazing package this is. You will be so glad you did. And I just have two more really quick questions. One is, can you just briefly tell us, what have you seen that people experience right away from taking advantage of what you teach? And then what have you seen in terms of long-range results, just so we could have a little bit of an idea, short range, long range?
Yeah, well, short range, people start tending to have more of a sense of lightness and a sense of possibilities. Like, okay, I can actually create what I've been wanting to create. I can actually change what I've been wanting to change. And they start having a difference in how they feel. Like they get more of a sense of lightness about them. And what also happens in short range and long range is you're in situations that would have triggered you before, like around people where you would have shrunk or felt like you had to fight or defend you. And all of a sudden you don't have to anymore. You're just there and you're not triggered anymore. So that's short and long range. And I'd say long range is, what I've noticed with the people who use access tools is they just have a greater sense of ease with everything. Like when the global financial crisis occurred, the rest of the world was going crazy. And so many of the people in access, I'm like, hey, how you doing? They're like, I'm fine. I'm good. And some of them may have lost some of their net worth, but very few of them did their incomes actually go down at all. And so it was this interesting thing to realize that long term, what happens is people have this sense of ease moving through life no matter what occurs. And they also have a sense of ease realizing, wow, I can actually create what I want to. I can change what I want to. It's all good. And so there's just this sense of pervasive ease and space that people have. And also this awareness that no matter what the situation is in front of me, I can find a way to change it. And it may not change in this moment, but I know I will find a way to change it, which gives you an incredible sense of being willing to be present for what goes on in life, rather than feeling like you have to avoid it or run away or feel like you can't be present in your life. And the other thing that people seem to notice is exactly what you noticed with your friend. The things that have been long-standing that they've never been able to change, somewhere, somehow, we get to some point of view and unlock it, and all of a sudden it changes as if by magic. And that's the cool part. When change occurs as if by magic, it's like, oh, how exciting is that?
Wow. And what a beautiful word, unlock it, because that's what it seems. I just see people unlock these things that have been locked in place for so long, and then it's unlocked as if by magic. So beautiful. Well, thank you. And is there anything else, any final thoughts you'd like to share with everyone before we go?
I would just like to say, everybody, what if it truly is time to create the life and living you've truly desired for so long, but either haven't been willing to create or haven't had the tools to create? And what if you creating that life and living is the greatest inspiration to other people to know it's possible? And what if you creating that actually changed the face of the planet? And what if you're one of the few people with the courage to do it? What if everything that you thought was a wrongness of you is actually a strongness of you, and it's time to acknowledge it? And lastly, what if you truly being you are the gift and the change this world requires?
Thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you've given us today. Thank you for being you, and I hope you'll come back again. And thank you to everyone for spending this time with Dr. Dain Heer and with me. This is Debra Poneman for Your Life Without Limits, and I look forward to when we're all together again. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.